All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I hope you guys are having a good trading day so far. I know I certainly have been. I just wanted to do a quick update overall, just talk about the challenge, where we've been at so far with it, the trades that we just jumped into, what I'm still eyeing potentially, as we go into the market close for today. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me do one thing here really quickly and find my stuff here. Let's go. Okay, so this should show the account here. Let me go ahead and take off the display really quickly before we dive into that. So here are all the challenge trades that we've done so far for the month, um, right? So we can just walk through these rather quickly to show where we're at currently. So started off with Apple, right? Jumped into a December week 1 trade with the 155 call, got in at $1.70. Now, if I knew Apple was going to take off as much as it did, I probably would have held on to this a bit longer. I really like Apple. It just, for the target that I had last week, it hit it, right? It hit the target of 155. Part of the reason why I jumped out of the trade at that level is because for those of you who are paying attention to the option chain, there was a lot of open interest at 155. And sometimes what that can mean is the price will stall at that level, right? Sometimes the price hovers there, sometimes it stalls there. Typically, it means when it's out of the money like that, that some big hedge fund has shorted the price at that level. And so when we went up and tested it and started to pull back, I was like, okay, it's probably going to hold this week. Let's just go ahead and take the quick profit. And then we can look to re-enter on a pullback because the weekly chart, everything still really looks great about Apple. And then instead, the market makers were like, no, we're going to start to squeeze these shorts out, right? And then Apple took off last week and certainly continued to take off today. It's finally pulling back a bit, so maybe it will give us the chance to re-enter it finally. But that's why I took it off when I did. So it was a very nice profit, though. Locked us in a quick dollar profit. And then, we were able to put that capital immediately back into a new trade, and we decided to go into a Google credit spread. So we jumped into that for a 235 credit. That followed through beautifully as well. So we were able to take the quick 55-cent profit on that, locked that in the next day, right? Jumped into that into the closed out of that at the open, basically 30 minutes into the open. And then we jumped into Fslr. And so I'll talk about this trade here in a second when we pull up the charts, but there's a technical signal on the weekly that made me jump into this trade. And then this morning it followed through on the signal and setup that I was looking for. So this was another one where I was like, okay, let's just take the quick profit, close it out, lock it in, and then move on, right, capital-wise to a new setup, which is what we're in now with NUE. So let's just walk through some of these charts now that we've gone through the account here, right, for the trades for the month so far, and let's talk about what these charts are looking like. So I'll just make this one big into the close. We are, ooh, SPX is pulling back to 4,700. For those of you who don't know or are maybe newer to trading, it is a holiday week this week with the US markets, meaning that it is a shortened trading week. We have Thursday off and Friday is a half trading day. And typically what happens is a lot of hedge funds will go and either take off early this week or they'll extend their vacation into next week. So we usually have lighter volume going into the holidays and as well as coming out of it. And usually what happens is the market will chop to overall trickle to the upside, right? So it's usually overall a bullish week, but it's usually a choppy, gradual bullish week, right? We don't see any too crazy of movements. That's why I was really surprised at how strongly everything was moving this morning, but you can see it's already starting to give it back on some of these, which bodes well for us. So with Apple, right, we jumped into this earlier on. We were waiting for this daily squeeze to fire. It finally started to happen. The weekly squeeze is still very much valid, which is why I still really like Apple. This, to me, still really looks good. I really didn't think it'd get up to 165. I thought we'd get a little bit more patience before getting to this level. Instead, it went right to today and is pulling back. We are making a bearish divergent bar, so it's a counter trend signal for me on a bullish trend, meaning it might not follow through. So it's less likely to. Uh, but typically, if I'm looking to build into a trade, right, I've already taken some profits on Apple. I would not mind to jump back in based off the weekly. And that's not just for the challenge account, that's across a lot of my accounts. Would love to jump back in based off the weekly chart. This is telling me that let's give it maybe a day or two, see if we can't get a little bit more of a pullback into support, get that lower low, and that might be our buy-in opportunity. Because otherwise, everything else about this chart is very much bullish to the upside, and momentum, both on the daily and weekly chart, tells us we have a lot of room where we can continue higher until we reach the top of that axis. So now this includes pullbacks, guys, but overall my big term target from this weekly squeeze is 175. Now we could immediately stair step up to that point. That's not what I'm expecting. Let me be clear about that. Not anticipating it. Could be that we don't get to 175 till like February, right? With the ebbs and flows of a bullish trend. So doesn't mean we can't pull back first, but long term, 175 from the squeeze firing is my next big target to the upside. It's just a question of when we'll go up and test it. So that was for the Apple trade. Let's talk about Google. Google, I am glad I didn't open this now into the close. I was debating about doing a credit spread here again, and it was just giving it up a little bit too much into the close, and that makes sense, of course, looking at the market giving it up into the close as well. Or it's basically going right back down to Friday's close, it feels like. So it's just chopping around here. But what I really like about Google is it's still in an overall bullish trend. And it's basically going back down towards the 30-period simple as support, which is also in line with a very nice round psychological number of 2,900. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about Amazon after I go through these, not a problem. But yeah, so Google, I actually wouldn't mind a re-entry. What I want to see going into tomorrow is if it can continue to hold 2,900 as support. Right now, the Bollinger Bands, they're not anticipating a sell-off, right? They're just anticipating chop. So the benefit for us is theta decays works great on holiday weeks like this because we don't have the market trading against us, but we still have theta decay working in our favor going into expiration. So I really wanted to do a credit spread on Google this week if if the opportunity presents itself, if the chart agrees with the strategy setup. I'd love to do something like a put credit spread on Google at a support level and just take a quick profit off the theta decay for this. So we'll see whether or not we can get the support to hold here. If it can't, then we'll just scratch the trade idea. We won't be in it. But if it can hold, that could make for a very nice trade just to bounce back up towards 3,000 or at least chop here and take the premium. After Google, it was Fslr, so let's talk about that one really quickly. And let me type in the right symbol, right? That might help. So Fslr, glad we took the profits when we did. So the daily chart overall is still a bit more in chop for me. We were at support of that chop, so it looked like we could follow through with the higher high. And the reason why it looked like we could bounce was because of the weekly chart. This is mainly where I took the setup off of. So we made a bullish divergent bar. For those of you who aren't familiar with this indicator, a bullish divergent bar is this light colored white bar on my chart, and it basically means that it's going to see some sort of higher high within the next 3 bars. So on the weekly chart, that means the next 3 weeks. That's why I gave myself so much time on this trade, because I wanted to make sure to give myself the 3 bars to have it work out. But a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times it will follow through within the next bar, and that's immediately what we got it open. So we opened it here around the close of market around 108. It popped up above I was looking for a move back above 112.64. We saw that this morning. It started to pull back a bit, so that's when I took my profit off. And then as soon as I did, it bounced up towards the highs today. So I hope everybody else got a better fill than I did on closing out of this, and we're able to lock in a better profit. But that's all I was looking for. I was just looking for a move back up to or above the high of last week. Because we got that, I was like, hey, let's just take the profit. And so happy we did given the pullback that we're getting. And this, to me, the back-to-back divergent bars here is a sign of consolidation. That matches, if
of course, it prints for the weekly bar this week, but it does match up with the daily chart. Now, that doesn't mean it can't go higher. Ultimately, resistance of this sideways chart to me is around 120, maybe 123. So absolutely could go back up here and test these levels, but it's in consolidation. So it could chop here for a few weeks before it even goes up to that level to test it, right? So when I see the bullish divergent bar follow through, and that's my main reason for getting into a trade, right? Or the main validation that I'm looking to follow through. Once it happens, I'm going to take my profit. Um, Especially if it's like at a nice profit target, of course, too. Otherwise, if everything else is still in line, then maybe I'll hold on to it, right? Like Apple, where everything else still looks great. So we'll keep it together. NUE, so let's talk about this trade. This is the one we just jumped into today. It's pulling back again. Some of you guys might have day traded this for a quick profit. But I really like the setup too. I'm looking just to play this back up towards 125, maybe 130 with these highs here. I do think ultimately it will probably go above that with the current setup that's showing. But it's printing a 4-hour chart, which looks very similar to the daily. So the 4-hour chart had a squeeze. It's just attempting to fire on this bar. We'll have to see into the close whether or not it does. It looks like it did. That was the close of market. We have the bullish signal in the compound breakout tool. We have momentum building up. We see the Bollinger Bands flaring open. The 10 is rolling up off the 30. Both are above the 100. And the price exceeded this outside blue line. And when that happens, that usually means that there's strength to continue on with higher highs. We technically got a higher high this bar. But a similar situation is also happening on the daily chart for the day, right? And this too is going into a bullish trend, bullish signal on the compound breakout tool. Here the squeeze is still very much valid, and momentum's building up once more with room to move higher, and Bollinger Bands are flaring open. So to me, all of this is a good sign, kind of like with Apple, right? When it starts to look like this, that it might start to stair step up. Now, once again, we were still mindful, right? We still went out to the second week of December to give ourselves some time on this trade. So, we are aware that we could still pull back before we continue higher. That's why we built time into it. But ultimately, if we are able to, within the next couple of days or certainly this week, go up to test this 125, 130 range, it should, whenever I was pricing it out, allow us around a quick dollar profit on the trade. So we'll see whether or not that can happen, but that's, roughly what I'm looking for. If it looks like it moves higher and it's starting to pull back like FSLR, then I might, lower that profit target, but that's what I'm seeing right now for NUE. And so that's, those are the trades that I'm still, keeping an eye on / that we've been in, as well as, of course, the new trade that we just set up for today. So pretty good month so far for our challenge. Knock on wood, everything's been a winner so far. And then really quickly, just because I said I would, before I head out, let's look at Amazon. So Amazon pulled back quite nicely for my simpler folk at Simpler Trading. Y'all know that I already talked about this today. I was very cautious about jumping into this last week because Amazon in particular has been a very choppy signal this year, and it has been trading in consolidated sideways ranges. And last week, even though everything looked good to try and continue higher, the highs ran right into our prior highs here, and we started to pull back. And this is basically resistance of our new choppy range. So for me, I wanted to see how it, traded into the start of this week, and you can see it's holding resistance, and we're pulling back into support. So I don't mind trading Amazon, but for me, Amazon needs to be traded in the levels, right? So right now it's currently pulling back. I'm not looking to be bearish, so I'm waiting for it to confirm a support level, and then maybe I'll look at that as a buy-in area to play back up into resistance again, right? But especially with the Bollinger Bands coming together, I'm not anticipating the squeeze to fire, at least not this week by any means. So 2 cents on Amazon. I hope that helps you out there, Vin. But thank you guys for joining me in here. It's just going to be a short session. I'm going to try and do these more on the weekends during my kids' nap time if they allow it. So be, free to check out Twitter. I'll certainly send updates in the Simpler Training chats as well for the chat rooms in there to let you guys know when I'm on. But otherwise, I hope you guys have a great rest of your trading day. As always, may the trade be with you for my Star Wars fans. And we'll look how NUE is trading tomorrow, see if we can't take a quick profit again. And otherwise, I'm going to see if we can't look at Google for a new setup. So have a good one, guys, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.